Coming to you from the world of AV control programming and automation with James King. I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. Hey, James, it's good to be with you again.
Oh, as always, Steve, it's a joy catching up and looking forward to this one.
And we always seem to have some good conversations, and a lot of the topics that we've been discussing are things that we've been receiving from the audience, and also some just common topics that we're hearing in the industry, and probably a lot of the curiosity and common questions that have been discussed about programming. I wanted to just give a shout out to Jimmy Singleton from USC. He's one of the people who have left us a comment, as well as Mike Krejci, I believe. I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, and Kelly Perkins, an old friend of mine who I appreciate, and thanks for listening and for leaving us some comments. Today we're going to talk about not only control programming, but what are the other things in the AV industry that are considered programming. And we're not going to get to all of them, but a couple of the common ones that we hear a lot about are audio DSP programming and lighting programming. And the thing that's important to understand, and they all are programming because they're done on a computer a lot, and they have a file associated with them, but there's a definite difference between what they are, and what constitutes programming. And we recently talked about programming versus configuration. So this is likely a good example and a good tie-in. And it's also important to understand how the control programming interacts with some of these other subsystems. James, when you're working on a project, and I know sometimes there's a expectation that the programmer is going to be the only guy that knows how to do anything that has to do with with a complex solution, and has to do with the with the computer files, let's say. And maybe I'm dating myself now, but they used to be the guy with the laptops, the smart guy on the job site. What's your experience been, and how do you approach explaining this to your team and the people that you're working with?
So first off, don't bring out the man behind the curtain, Steve. Yes, we're the laptop guys. We are the brains. Don't show that we don't know everything. But no, the true is, yeah, the idea was you're the one at the job site with the laptop. You're the one configuring or programming. I'll use the air quotes, programming all the devices. Now, I'll admit I'm a little boxed in my AV programming world because I've only been on higher education side. So I have not really done any live programming, like live audio programming, where you're including lights and sound mixing boards and all that stuff. I mean, I do have three event rooms that are using DSPs and mixers. We do have one or two rooms that have lighting control, but I actually don't. I'm still learning those, so I haven't programmed those per se. But to me, it goes back to our last episode of, for me, when I'm looking at difference between DSP and control programming, you're sitting there and you're typing out the commands. And DSP to me was more of, I'm dragging boxes around and connecting virtual wires. So to me, that's a configuration, not a programming. Yes, you do have that logic control there where you can do your if then, but you're not writing 100 lines of code to make a button flash, like you do in programming. It's more of, okay, I got these boxes, I'm connecting them. That's my take on it. So I kind of push more DSP into a configuration mindset instead of a programming mindset.
One thing I'll add there too, and I think you're right, and that's I think I couldn't have explained it any better. Um, the audio side of it, you kind of need to understand audio, and that's the thing that is really important to realize that control we really focus on knowing the user and the operation and how to talk to these devices and how to make them do the things that we need them to do. But audio is a little bit of a different animal, and you really need to know the principles of audio and what constitutes good audio and how to make adjustments and really accomplish the outcome of a good sounding room. And it is very much configuration, as you mentioned. Then there's that component of how they tie together, and that's where I think part of the overlap is. But I find it really interesting when it's just assumed that the same person's going to do control programming and audio programming, and quite honestly, until recently we always did control programming and never did the audio. And we've been able to bring audio onto our team. Um, but it wasn't because we decided we were going to do audio. We actually hired somebody who had an audio background, and that really makes all the difference in the world.
Yes, I can 100% agree with that because I do not have an audio background. In fact, my first project where we had a DSP, I knew nothing about audio, and I went to our manufacturer training for that DSP. And I remember sitting there in the class, and there was someone else there. Um, and he said he was kind of like me. He was coming more from the IT programming side, and he's learning the audio side. And his response was, for me, audio is either there or it's not there. Other than that, I don't care. And that kind of how I looked at it too at first. It's like it's either there or it's not there. I don't care about my gain structure and all that stuff. I do now. I've gotten an understanding and I'm still learning what gates and duckers and limiters um, are doing. And that goes back to building that community where it was all new to me. I didn't know it. And I've learned it from the manufacturer. But as we pointed out, manufacturers train you for their products, not general all the time. So building a relationship with people who know audio, who can come in and be like, okay, well, the audio guys, I give nothing prop to. I remember Lee, one of my newer event spaces, we were tuning it out, and I had an audio guy come in to help tune it out. And he's like, all right, we need to cut 6 dBs on the 20 hertz. I'm like, how can you know that? I can't. I'm starting to develop that ear, but I mean, he had that ear. So I give audio people those props when they can know what frequencies and where you need to cut and do all that stuff. But yeah, it's, to me, it's more configuring, but it's an art. Audio is definitely an art. And I don't even know how lighting is yet because I'm still diving into the muddy weeds of audio.
I think again very well put, and it's really important for people to understand, especially employers, that you it's audio is probably the most important part of an AV system, and a lot of people take it for granted. And to send somebody out who knows how to program per se to set up your audio systems probably not the smartest idea. And I think it's going to, there's one thing if you press a button and it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It's another thing if you try to uh, have a presentation or a call and you can't hear each other or you get a lot of echo.
Yeah. And I'll admit that's really the joy when you can figure out that audio part without going too much in audio. It's programming side of the DSP, or like I say, using the control integration to your DSP is definitely nice because it allows you to get your programming joys and practice in, but you really need to have that understanding of the audio because if you're cutting frequencies or if you're throwing gates in, limiters or duckers, you got to know how they react. So if I'm turning a ducker on, I need to know what it's going to do in the room. Um, saying, I mean, we know as programming, if I'm hitting on for a display, the display should turn on. But how many people will actually know what a ducker is doing? So if you're having a ducker controlling your interface and you're hitting the button to enable the ducker or disable it, do you know it's actually working? And how do you know it's working? Unless you know what it's supposed to do and how it's supposed to work.
Just to touch on lighting a little bit, to close the loop, and as we round out the show, the lighting side of it is very similar to lighting. You could appreciate a little bit more because it's light, but there and we're used to recalling presets or giving somebody the ability to raise or lower a level, but there's a an art behind setting up scenes and building zones and providing a simple and a solution that's going to be comfortable and lights the right subjects, and especially when it comes to doing a presentation or doing a conference, the lighting levels and the lighting and the direction of the lighting, they need to be fairly specific so that you're getting the best results. And when you're looking at doing something more on a residential level, it can really get interesting in terms of scenes of using light to balance the daytime versus nighttime, and the different settings will enhance somebody's lifestyle. So it's a very intricate solution that shouldn't be taken lightly.
Yeah.
No
And
pun intended.
a good pun there. But to wrap this up, like you were saying, it goes back to what we were talking about of building that community, not being that person on the island. Because, like I said, we're not gonna. You may not know about audio, but you have to program a DSP or connect with a DSP. So reach out to your audio friend. Um, Same with lighting. I actually, I still have a contact with him, but I was really learning a lot about lighting from a student worker. He was actually working for our department, but he was a theater major. So he knew lighting very well. So I was actually learning a lot from him. And a lot of people would be like, he's a student worker. Why are you learning from him? He knows it. He's my SME there. Where when it was other areas, he was looking to us for the information. But that's what you got to do. You got to find those people who are knowledgeable, who are willing to share, mentor, as you mentioned in a couple episodes ago. Get out there and learn these other products because that's only going to make you a better programmer.
That's really why we're here. So that's a good way to wrap this one up, and let us know again if this is a useful episode, and what experiences you've had, and how many of you do control and other things as well, and if you think that that's a good combination, or if that's something that you just are doing by default. So for James, why don't you share how people can reach out to you and continue the conversation?
As always, you can get me on Twitter, AV_James King, LinkedIn, James King, or catching my monthly article at higheredav.com and columns called IT and AV.
And for me, it's simply Steve Greenblatt on social media. Be really thrilled to hear from the audience, connect on LinkedIn, Twitter, and so forth. And if you would be so kind as to leave us a review or a comment, we're on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. And if there's another platform that you'd like us to be on, share that as well. And we'll do our best to make that happen. And we'll continue this conversation. So until next time, this is Ask the Programmer.